One of World of Warcraft's most beloved expansions is coming back. Legion Remix is almost upon us, and we have a whole lot to talk about. New mounts, new transmog, Diablo-style gameplay mechanics, heroic world tier, Mythic Plus, and fixing mistakes from Mists of Pandaria. Hello everyone, I am Jmulls, and let's get into it. Let's begin with the most memorable and iconic element of Legion, the artifact weapons, because they do make a return here in Legion Remix, but with a bit of a twist. Everyone shares the same trait tree, at least from the sounds of it, and that tree has various branches for Nature, Fel, Arcane, Storm, and Holy. This makes a lot of sense to me because classes play so differently to how they did in Legion. So it's not like you can just port those old artifact trees one for one. Heck, quite a few of those abilities are just baseline now, while already in the talent trees we already have. So doing something a bit more fun, something a bit different makes a lot of sense to me. And with how fast and rapid Remix is supposed to be and feel, hopefully the artifact power grind of yesteryear is far more palatable here. And I think the overall vibe I'm getting from Legion Remix is them really learning the lessons from Mists of Pandaria, with just how weirdly restrictive some of that design could have been. It was still a great mode, don't get me wrong, it's just like sometimes they were weirdly stubborn about things that felt like Blizzard just shooting themselves in the foot, and I don't get a lot of that here, if any. You can freely swap your talent points in the artifact tree whenever you want, and they even let you customize and pick traits from the other paths, allowing you to mix and match things. It seems like a really cool way to go about bringing the artifact system back into the modern day. And for those of you who may not have been around for Mists of Pandaria Remix, it's essentially the expansion, just hyper fast and with a bunch of new power-ups to make you insanely broken and powerful. All the while going through the content that was there in that expansion at a far faster rate, but also acquiring all the cosmetics, all the rewards, at least most of them, on top of new ones. Now, I know the biggest red flag a lot of people have is that apparently you're not able to do the Mage Tower in order to acquire the artifact appearances you got from completing the Mage Tower for each of the specializations. I don't know if they're going to change that. I would personally advocate for them allowing you to acquire those cosmetics from the Mage Tower in Legion Remix because I think it would be fun. And really, do we need a better reason than that? I would argue no. But let's move on to the thing I'm most excited about. Heroic World Tier. One of my longest running complaints about World of Warcraft has been the open world content being so piss easy the moment you get any gear. Or even while you're leveling, it can just make a lot of these big moments that are supposed to be impactful and feel cool, or at least they're supposed to, in the story, just end up feeling lame and flaccid because they're so stupidly easy, it requires no thought. Big named mobs they're hyping up to be these big threats or to allow you to feel payoff for finally overcoming this guy. You don't get that satisfaction when they die within, like, I want to say maybe 4 GCDs. And look, a lot of people don't want a particularly hard experience in the overworld, that's their prerogative. But what they're doing with Legion Remix is including something called a heroic world tier, very much inspired by Diablo. It's basically an overall difficulty modifier, giving enemies more HP, damage, and something else that really feels like Diablo, affixes. Not only making them more difficult, but also buffing their rewards. Now, they weren't particularly clear about whether or not this would apply to every mob or just the occasional mob you run into, but the example they gave and showed was a Murloc that had his red orb above its head. And on top of all of that, you can find these time-warped obelisks around the map that give you various buffs or can even summon enemies for you to fight. I love how arcadey Remix can feel at the best of times, and Legion just seemingly is going in that direction and leaning into it. Let the player feel goofy and wildly powerful, and let the world feel really powerful so that you can utilize all the goodies the game is providing you in interesting and meaningful ways. It's its own separate, cordoned-off instance. It's basically a playground, so let it be fun. That was its biggest issue when it came to Mists of Pandaria. Now and then, they would have design there that felt anti-fun. Like, oh, do you want to upgrade your gear? Well, you'll spend your bronze doing that, but you also want to spend your bronze on cosmetics, do you? Well, have fun making that choice. We just won't be making that choice now because they went with the obvious thing they should have done back in Mists of Pandaria and said, okay, well, bronze is now specifically for cosmetics. If you want gear upgrades, go play the content. Should have been like that in Pandaria, but I'm glad they're not sticking to their guns in this one, because this is a far better direction, and I believe will make Legion Remix all the more enjoyable because of it. My thing with Heroic World here, circling back to that for a second, is that this idea, this concept has so much potential, and I would love to see them find a way to work this into the main game some way, somehow. They've been slowly trying to do that over the course of the War Within. You had the Siren Isle with the Storm phase, and you also have Koresh with the phase transition. This feels like them experimenting with that core idea, but in a different way, in a way that feels far more like Diablo, and I hope they continue to experiment with design like this, because finding ways to make the overworld more interesting and enjoyable, especially when it comes to leveling, I think can go so far for this game's continued health and growth. But Legion was more than just the open world and leveling. Let's talk content. And the big piece of endgame content introduced in Legion that changed World of Warcraft forevermore was Mythic Plus. Whether you love it or hate it, you couldn't do Legion Remix without Mythic Plus. And it is here, with the old affixes, but also 4 new affixes. They're creating these things called Time-Worn Keystone Dungeons, which I'm pretty sure just the name they're giving Mythic Plus dungeons in Legion Remix, but like I just said, you have those original affixes from Legion with the Legion dungeons, alongside 4 new affixes that they're calling Eternus's Trials. Combined with the wacky power scaling we get in Remix, I can just imagine the diabolical strategies people are going to form for Mythic Plus here. It honestly sounds kind of fun, especially to test your mettle with the various buffs and insane abilities they're bound to give you here. But let's talk about the daily grind. They're doing this thing called Infinite Research. Do you know the type of quest you get in the main game where like once a week you pick the category of content you want to do and you get rewarded for it? It's essentially that for Legion Remix. But instead of being on a weekly lockout, it's every day. And you can choose these various research assignments that you can go on. Some of the examples they showed off here were like gathering time-warped herbs and ores, going to do normal dungeons, collecting time motes in the sky while you're flying, because yes, we have skywriting here, complete a zone chapter in a story, and initially you'll be able to do one of these research missions a day, but you'll unlock the ability at some point to do multiple a day. And while that does absolutely sound like a daily chore that can be off-putting for some people, again, smart design. They're allowing you to pool these things up. So if you miss a few days, up to 6 days, you can just bang them all out then. So if you only have time to play on the weekend, you can just pool up all of your research missions over the course of the week for the weekend. And if you just want to spam some dungeons, so long as that's one of the options, there you go. Again, the name of the game here seems to be they're actually making smart design choices. Just ignore the Mage Tower. We're going to ignore that because for some reason they are too. I know we talked about it already, but I still think it's a really dumb decision. I would caution against Blizzard doing this. Getting all those power-ups and running the Mage Tower on various alts could be a really cool thing to do, and just like not incentivizing people to do that feels really stupid to me. And this is coming from someone who already has a couple of Mage Tower appearances. I wouldn't mind if someone else is able to get a werebear, because the prestige of the Mage Tower did kind of die down near the end of Legion back when it was live content. Okay, I think Legion had some of the best transmogs and cosmetic rewards of any expansion in this game's history, and they're fully all in when it comes to this. You know all the class mounts you could acquire by doing your Autohaul campaign? Yeah, well, there's new Fel-infused versions of all those mounts. Some of them look awesome, too. I particularly like the green Fel mage disc you can get. But there's also a robe transmog that looks very much like a Jara. You can get Manroth shield, you can get Variant Charlemagne sword, but it's like Fel corrupted as well. And all the old rewards, again, Sans Mage Tower, are making a comeback here, including the August scythes. But on top of the old ones that are already there, there's a new Fel version as well. It's green, but it looks pretty sick, and it's the scythe. Legion had a lot to collect and a lot to acquire, and I'm glad a lot of that is coming back and they're adding even more cool stuff to it. And you don't have to make this awkward, stupid decision you had to in Mr. Pandaria Remix, where it's like, oh, do I want to upgrade my gear so I can do the content better with my bronze, or do I want to buy the cosmetic thing I'll be able to keep on my account? That was an annoying choice we used to have to make in Pandaria, but we don't have to do that anymore because the bronze is just for cosmetic items. Thank God. And for the altaholics out there who already have their accounts maxed out and are like, well, do I have to delete characters in order to participate in this content? No, because they're adding 5 new character slots to all World of Warcraft accounts. So I mean, I guess if you want more than 5 characters for Remix, then yeah, but I still view this to be a really good thing. And also get this, if you played Mr. Pandaria Remix, were you like me where you kind of finished out a character and got everything you wanted on that character before the event ended, and you really wished you could just bring him over to the base game and play with him there? Well, you can here. No longer do you have to wait for the end of the event in order to use your Remix characters for the rest of the game. You can just choose to migrate that character over to the War Within. You can't bring him back to Remix, you would have to make a new character for Remix, but if you've had your fill on that character with Remix and you just want to play them in the live game for whatever reason, you can just bring them over. Really cool change. And just in case you were wondering, it clears your quest log, grants you, according to their own post, level appropriate gear and gold, and removes all Remix specific items and abilities. But you'll retain any of the cosmetics you acquired, even the unopened ones. They'll just be mailed to you. And for the overall timing here, they're adding new phases every 2 weeks. So they're starting from the launch of Legion, working all the way up to August and in Taurus. So it's going to be lightning quick, but all the grinds, all the things that took a bunch of time, will be expedited as well. They even gave us an overview of the various phases. The first one's called Skies of Fire. Take to the skies of the Broken Isles with the original Legion content and the Emerald Nightmare raid. The next one is the Rise of the Nightfallen. Continue the Nightfallen story with the Insurrection campaign. Yeah, Suramaz and Legion, by the way. It was awesome. And new world quests across the Broken Isles. Re-experience the Legion Mega Dungeon with the Return to Karazhan, and take on the Nighthold and Trial of Valor raids. Legion Fall. Establish a foothold on the Broken Shore, take on Legion assaults, and fight your way into the Cathedral of Eternal Night and the Tomb of Sargeras. And then August Eternal. Replay the August campaign across 3 deadly zones, take on the Seat of the Triumvirate and Antorus, the Burning Throne. But that's not the final one. The final phase is Infinite Echoes. As the Legion Remix timeline begins collapsing, say your goodbyes and embrace the chaos. They mentioned this on the WoWcast. Basically, they're giving you a month at the end just to play through all the content. So after the final phase has been launched, that final phase, Infinite Echoes, is basically a month to allow you to catch up on anything and do whatever you want. Now, they weren't particularly clear whether or not that month counts in the August Eternal phase or the Infinite Echoes phase. Maybe Infinite Echoes is just like the very final part where Remix is taken offline, but the way they talked about it on the WoWcast is that after all the content's been launched, you'll have a month at the end to be able to do anything at your own pace. Mr. Pandaria Remix was a ton of fun, and I really enjoyed my time with it, and Legion Remix seems to be an even bigger step up from that, foregoing a lot of the weirdly stubborn design Mr. Pandaria Remix had, and also Legion just being a really good expansion with a ton of fun content in it. And when it comes to Remix, the issues that Legion had back in the day probably won't be felt nearly as much, like legendary acquisition and the artifact power grind, with how fast Remix tends to be, and with how fast they want Legion Remix to be in particular. I think it'll allow us to focus on what works in Legion while ignoring what didn't work, all the while just being a really cool and fun event to do. And I love that WoW has been leaning in this kind of design, especially in these windows that were traditionally viewed to be periods of downtime for the game, can now be viewed as times of excitement where they can do these wild, wacky things as we wait for more traditional new content to be made and released. And I love the idea that the end of an expansion can just have a remix event as we wait for the next expansion. I think it's a really good pace and a good way to cap off an overall expansion. Thumbs up for me. I'm looking forward to this and I'm excited. Now here's where you come in. Leave a comment down below. with what class you want to play the most when it comes to Legion Remix. What Order Hall campaign do you want to relive? What cosmetic, what mount do you want to acquire? I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions and hear your perspectives. And if you want to be up to date with all things World of Warcraft, especially as we're about to dive into Midnight and all the news associated with that, you should leave a like and subscribe. Follow me on TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter, Jmulls. G have a Discord in the description down below. Guys, the storytelling in WoW is broken. Blizzard are weirdly stubborn about this, and it's doing a lot of harm to the narrative. We have a lot to talk about, and if you want to find out more, you should check out this video right here for more. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again!